So what was once this core, strong group, multiple groups all around the world, that was just full of men actually being men together with a sense of competition and our male masculine values, it's being destroyed and took away from us. Bro, this pisses me off, honestly.
All these men's spaces being destroyed. Who's at fault? Hamza says. Woke SJWs who are trying to make women be a part of Boy Scouts. Who's destroying all these men's spaces? Who's making it so that we don't have shared spaces anymore? My response? Mega wealthy corporations like fucking General Motors, Ford, the car and automobile industry that have literally bought and paid for politicians to make it so that you need a car to get anywhere, so you don't have any shared spaces, so that you cannot walk to places, so that you cannot get on a bus. You have to have the money to have a car to go anywhere. Like, which of these answers seems more likely to actually be the answer? So obviously we've been talking about men a lot. I recently put out a video, are we failing at fighting people like Andrew Tate, talking about why I think self-help content is actually a pretty good vehicle to try to reach a lot of, in particular, insecure young men, because those are the people that are looking for that kind of content. The content creators that use it are usually able to get to substantial size pretty quickly, and they also have the unfortunate byproduct of either having, one, an explicit right-wing political bias for doing so, and are trying to get people to adopt right-wing politics, through the avenue of their self-help content. But also, even if they are apolitical, they end up moving people in that direction anyway, because self-help in general is seen as a right-wing thing. And a lot of the advice that's given, while it can be good, also seems to move people in a rightward direction, because of the kind of bootstraps mentality that goes into it. I don't think it has to be that way, and I've talked about, especially in this video here, all about that, how it's a tactic, and I think it's one that could be used effectively. I try to do what I can when I can, but I'm not really the archetype that a lot of, insecure young men are going to respect when it comes to stuff like that. So I wanted to look at a Hamza video. We've actually reacted to two of these in the past. Hamza doesn't seem to have like an overt political motive from what I can tell from the two videos I've seen. He does do self-help kind of content, though, and he's had a lot of yikes takes that I've looked at and dissected with a laser-pointed scalpel. So I wanted to look at 90% of men are lonely. What are the consequences? It's more than likely about this study that came out that showed that men are very lonely. They're having difficulty finding friends, romantic partners, and sexual partners, and that's a problem in society. Shocking, I know, contrary to popular belief, anybody having difficulty with those things in our society is a problem. Now, it's not always going to be the symptom of a systemic issue, but it can be, and we can talk about that. Fixing these problems, as any reasonable person should want to do, would be a good thing, but it depends on how you go about trying to fix it. And right-wing people aren't. A lot of right-wingers that talk about self-help related stuff are trying to get people locked into this rugged individualist mindset that's actually counterproductive because they don't want people to look at systemic issues. But anyway, I've front-loaded this with a lot of politics so that all the people that might be actually willing to watch this video that might get turned off to politics are now clicked off. So let's just watch the video.
Jeffrey's done everything right, so why isn't it working? He went to school and he studied as best as he could. When he'd speak to girls, he was as nice as he possibly could be, and they just never seemed interested in him.
Just a nice guy.
Year by year, Jeffrey is just sick of these rejections. Soon enough, he doesn't even want to try anymore. He finds comfort in the internet and online communities and dirty websites. And then he sinks deeper and deeper into the hole of loneliness. If we zoom out, more than 90% of the entire world are like Jeffrey. What are the 10% like? Adonis.
Oh boy.
Adonis is part of the 10% of men, but that does not mean that he is an asshole. In fact, Adonis is the most kind, the most generous, the most supportive tribe leader that they could be. He wants his men to grow alongside him, to experience all of the happy, beautiful moments that he's experienced being in this top position of men. Adonis isn't lonely, but he can emphasize with the men that are. When I started this journey of entrepreneurship and self-improvement, I moved away from the city that I was living in, and I moved back to my parents' house. I moved back in the COVID lockdown, and I was deeply lonely. I was literally all by myself. I had my family, but I wasn't so close to them. I didn't speak to any of my old friends. Honestly, I tried to. I really tried to message them and stuff, and they kind of ignored me and stuff. And I literally just started to just navigate life by myself, trying to build a business, trying to, grow this YouTube channel. And I'd go on walks every single day, literally just hoping to like bump into someone that I could talk to. And I was like practicing approaching guys and stuff. I remember recording a private personal video, just kind of like almost like a vlog that I could watch back of how things were. And in this 12-minute video, I ended up just repeatedly saying of how lonely I was, that the social and sexual sides of my life were totally just lacking. I had no male friends. I wasn't meeting any girls. I didn't have any level of intimacy for around 4-5 months.
I don't think he's saying that 90% of them are incels, Melly, but that they're lonely. They're having difficulty getting any relationships. That's just including sexual. Though it says 90% of men are lonely. Does anybody have a link to the study or that article that talked about how many men were having difficulty attaining sexual relationships or even like non-sexual ones? That's what I was assuming we were going to be talking about. So I don't have a lot to say yet because we're kind of like talking about Hamza's story and blah, 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 blah. We're going to get into why are men lonely though, and that's going to be really interesting.
90% of men are lonely, and we're going to figure out what the consequences of this are. But first, we need to actually figure out and discuss why are so many men so
we're going to go into
There's
the why.
two major reasons.
We're going into the why, and I'm very excited because I was hoping we wouldn't just, stick to the not why, because that seems cringe and not fun. New study, so this is from Healthline. Thank you, CDRCH. Why young adults, especially men, are having sex less frequently. New study indicates that men and women between the ages of 18 and 24 are having sex less often. Experts say delayed adulthood may be one factor. The amount of material on the internet to watch may also be affecting personal face-to-face relationships. The experts say a lack of sex can affect the person's overall well-being. Okay, so let's see the facts and figures. About 1 in 3 men ages 18 to 24 reported no sexual activity in the past year, according to a new study published in JAMA Network Open. Between 2000 and 2002 and 2016 and 2018, past year sexual inactivity rose from almost 90% to almost 31% among men ages 18 to 24, according to the researchers led by Dr. Peter Yuda. Yudaho. A postdoctoral researcher at the Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm, Sweden. Sexual inactivity among women of the same age remained relatively constant, raising from 15% to 90% over the same time period. Study also found that sexual activity declined significantly among men and women ages 25 to 35 years old, 7% versus 14% among men, 7% versus 12% among women. Sexual activity did not decline among adults ages 35 to 44. So this is kind of what we're talking about. So there's two major reasons, say Hamza. Let's see.
One is about male safe spaces and our ability to make male friends. And the other is about the dating market and how fucked it is to try and date and cultivate love and relationships and to build a family in this modern day. So we'll talk about that first. There is a current dynamic that you probably are aware of, which is that the majority of women are getting fucked by the same few top tier guys.
No. No, man. This is not good. We are already off on a bad foot, everybody. Uh-oh. Hypergamy, man. This idea that, oh my god, all these women are having all kinds of sex, and they're all deciding to have sex with the higher value men, and the low value men aren't getting any because of that. This isn't actually, I'm pretty sure, a documented thing that happens. And also, it's all young adults that are having difficulty attaining sex. It is all people who are having difficulty maintaining relationships. Now, it's primarily men that are getting targeted, and the biggest part of that is because courting has always been the domain of men. Like, literally, society, because of its misogynistic view of women, has decided, oh, if you're a man, you're the one who has to go out and try to find a woman, right? Like, if a woman approaches you, you're kind of a beta male, because why is she taking the masculine, powerful role in that engagement? When, frankly, being hit on by a woman as a man, I would imagine would make most of them feel good, as long as it's a good situation and no one's being weird, right? That's one of the main reasons why that's even a thing. And obviously that's not a problem of all men. Not every man that exists has been an active part of like the entire problem here. They might accidentally contribute to it by accidentally looking into all this kind of like self-help content and maybe getting into that pipeline. Like, not every man out there is going to be misogynistic and looking for that system to be the one that stays in place. That's ridiculous to assume that. However, if you are unaware of that, you can unknowingly contribute to it. Or if you are aware of that and don't do anything to fight against it, then you're not really helping anybody either. So one of the biggest reasons why the dating market is fucked in that way is not necessarily the design of men generally, but the very powerful men that have kind of pushed these tropes. You know what I mean? Just to be clear. Like, these studies are talking about how it is not just a problem of men. It's just more likely to affect men for a variety of reasons, mostly because our society has decided that it is the domain of men to go and pursue women. If that wasn't the case, if it was an equal 50-50 between anybody just going out and like doing the courting or whatever, then you might not see that much of a prevalence in that issue in the dating market. But we live in the society we live in, we live with the conditions that we live with. Hypergamy is not the cause of that, though.
I don't mean to be vulgar by saying that word fucked, but that's exactly what's happening. The top tier guys, the guys in the top 10% of men, the wealthy guys who are in shape, who are very confident, and who have this masculine, stoic personality which is so attractive to women. These top tier guys, just a handful out of hundreds or thousands of guys, they're sleeping with most girls. And you might think that this is a bit too far, right? No. There's real data to prove that the top 20% of men are attracting 80% of women. I'll say that again. The top 20% of men are attracting 80% of women. There's a very exponential return based on...
So where's the data? I'm not seeing a link. Attracting doesn't equal sleeping with, and dating, that's also true. I'm not seeing I've got a study here. Okay, maybe we'll find it later on.
The majority of men get literally zero attraction from women. There's been studies done on dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, which have shown that the majority of women actually left swipe almost every guy. But the guy that they do right swipe on is pretty much the same for so many girls. So essentially, this is the dynamic of the one guy fucking 10 girls who all know each other.
So if we take this at face value and that it's actually real, how do you solve that issue? Well, you would solve that issue by not using a dating app, by going out and trying to like develop relationships with people outside of the dating apps. Because it does seem to be true that dating apps do skew toward women. The primary reason being because men in society are meant to seduce the women for whatever reason. Now, you'll run into a problem with that in that, okay, so how do people do that? How do people go out and touch grass and develop these kind of relationships? Well, we've talked about this on this channel before. It is true that it's hard for men to do that. But it's also true that it's hard for women and literally anybody else to do that too, especially if you live in the United States of America, which is what I'm going to primarily be talking about, because one, it is a very powerful country that's always going to be culturally relevant no matter what country you're talking about, and two, because it's where I live. So, the biggest reason why this is and this is by the design of the people who are in power, who designed our cities and our infrastructure, the dissolving of what are called third places. So, the concept of a third place is this, very simply. There's one place, there's a second place, and there's a third place, right? The first place is your home. That's where you live. You go there to, shit in a pot, make a meal, have a family, do your leisure activity in the home anyway, bada bing, bada boom. Number two, the second place is your place of work. This is going to be the place that you go in order to make money to be able to live in our society that requires you to have money to live. So if you work at home, then your first and second place are the same, like I do. But when I was in the food service workplace for the greater part of a decade, my second place was the food service places that I was working at, right? The third place is meant to be a place where people gather together in a shared location, and it's specifically and ideally one that doesn't require monetary investment to utilize, meaning that like a public park. Right? Going to a public park where you don't have to spend money to be there. You can be there. There's going to be random strangers around, and you have the ability to hang out with friends and family there or have chance encounters with strangers, right? Find other people. Like maybe you go to the public park and they're kicking a foot bag around, You go to a public park and they're knocking this little foot bag around, this little hacky sack. For you Americans. And you like that too, and you're into that too. Well, then you go over to them, talk about them, ask if you could join their game, if they're jousting or whatever it is that you call it, when you smack it at each other. And then you can find friends that way. Or maybe you have a dog and you're walking your dog in this park. You find other people in the park who also have dogs. The dogs meet up because they kind of get drawn to each other. Because, funnily enough, dogs are better at socializing than humans. And it kind of forces the two dog owners to talk to each other and get to know each other, right? And it's always cool to see that. That is the idea of a third place. Now, in the past, this was public parks, sure, but it was also plazas. It was also literally just streets. If you think about your favorite Studio Ghibli movie or your favorite Disney movie that all take place in the olden days before motor vehicles were really the major way people got around, you'd see a street where people are sitting out on tables or benches just hanging out. Right? Or maybe there's a shop that, their house is really close to. They walk to this street, they go to the shop, it's a coffee shop, they hang out and sit, and there's just a bunch of people around. There's strangers around, you're talking to the vendors at these shops. You have so many opportunities to have chance encounters with random people you've never known that you could become friends with, or at least acquaintances with. And those kinds of social bonds help people stick together better, even if they're just as acquaintances. You go to your local deli to get a cut of meat that you're gonna make for your, food for your family with when you go home, or your local butcher. You get to know them. Johnny the butcher, Josephine the deli worker. You get to know her. You get to know her family through talking to her or him. And then you become a broader part, and you feel like a broader part of your community. Now, what's interesting about that is that those places don't really exist anymore. There aren't very many places you can go in society currently, especially in America, where you can just go and exist. Public parks still exist, but they're not as many as there should be, and they're also not as good as they could be. There aren't a lot of places you could just go and sit outside at that don't require you to spend money. Most of the places you're going to go to are going to be places like coffee shops or restaurants or, I don't know, stores you go to get clothes that you happen to see people in, but you're not really hanging out in, right? The idea of the big shopping mall, like a big indoor shopping mall, was a kind of an attempt to do this in like modern society, where like you would have like a food court where you didn't necessarily have to eat food to be there. The entire point of being there is buying shit, so it's not the best, but you could go there without buying anything. You just window shop, talk to people. But now those are dead because of Amazon and online shopping, so like those are gone as well. So it's like, you don't really have that anymore. And you want to know the reason why that is? It's not because of these dating apps. It's not because all the hot women are fucking all the hot men, and all the ugly men, and nobody ever talks about the ugly women are getting left in the dust. It's because of the automobile. It's because of the car. Like, I'm going to tell you straight up. It is because of the fact that we have built our fucking cities to revolve around the existence of the automobile. You want to know why all those return to tradition motherfuckers always look at old ass pictures of places where you could just walk around and see people and go to shops or just hang out outside? You know why they look at those pictures all the time? Oh, this old architecture that was so nice. It's because cars weren't fucking existing yet, brother. You don't have to have a car to get around, so you design your cities around people instead of cars. That is the main reason why. You know how many chance encounters you have driving down the street with other people that are positive? Almost none. You know how many chance encounters you have with people that are not? Relatively frequently. Unfortunately, getting stuck in traffic, getting cut off in traffic, car accidents, or pedestrians who are braving the elements, walking around in car town, trying to get from point A to point B because they don't have the money to afford a car. You know what I mean? So it's like all of these encounters have been stripped away, and people are socially isolated because of it. How do you fix that? By pressuring the people in power to actually try to reformat our cities around humans instead of people. By pressuring people to develop more public transit, so you can go on a bus, a train, a subway, a tram. You know how many strangers are on those things? You know how many people you might have a chance to talk to? You know all those videos you see of the New York City subway? Not only of it, being not in the best state because this country doesn't give a shit about public transit, but like all the cool performers and whatever in the subway, the people that are dancing around on the subway. People like that shit. And if you don't, you could just put your earbuds in and not fucking pay attention to it because you're in transit, to and from work, whatever, right? So many other countries have figured this out, but the United States hasn't, because the automobile industry is like thoroughly fucked us so hard that you have to have a car to get anywhere. And if you don't, you're left up to the whims of the absolute dog shit on the road. Shout out Not Just Bikes. Shout out Alan Fisher, the armchair urbanist. Shout out City Nerd. All these creators talk about this shit if it sounds interesting to you. Not necessarily in the political way that I'm talking about it, but in the way that, these places could be better and here's how we do it. I also talk about it too. That is one of the primary reasons. So now that we've kind of talked about all that, what happens outside of our current society where you can just go somewhere and exist, where you can have chance encounters with strangers, men out there? You know what can happen to you, men, when you're out there? You might see a fancy, fine, pretty lady, a lass out there. I know, right? They exist in the wild. You might actually have a chance encounter with a woman, a female, and you might be able to develop a bond with them, either platonic, romantic, and eventually maybe even sexual, right? That could happen, and you have a higher statistical probability of that happening if the conditions are in place to allow it. But they're not. How many women do you find randomly that you become friends with driving your car down the road? It doesn't happen. How many places do you go where you do this either? It doesn't happen. If you're going to like the grocery store where there's a bunch of people, you're not going to really be looking for women to strike conversations with because people are there to get their groceries and go home. So what's left? bars, nightclubs, these kinds of places that are, let's be honest, not the most appealing to everybody because not everybody's into that scene. And two, not very good for people who might have social anxiety, which is a real natural, normal thing to have. How much easier might it be for you to be in a park or on a street where, you're just like walking around? How much less pressure do you think you might have to talk to somebody in that way? Like, versus talking to someone in a restaurant where you don't want to bother people. Like, if you see somebody walking down the street in a park and you talk to them, hey, what's up? How are you? Oh, I see you're doing XYZ. That's interesting. If they very clearly aren't interested in continuing the conversation, you just walk away because you're in a park. You just leave. You're on a street, you just leave, and you could try again with somebody else. Or you strike up that conversation and actually turns into more. You become friends, maybe even partners, romantic or sexual, and bada bing, bada boom, you're in, right? And not only just for having the success rate there, but also for having the ability to practice. One of the big things that I really liked that Hassan says whenever he talks about a lot of this stuff, especially in a lot of his early Chad Vice segments, is that being social, and specifically as a man talking to women, but this obviously works for everybody, being social and being able to strike up conversations and talk to people in this way, it's like a muscle. For all you Hamza viewers out there, y'all like working out. I like working out too. It might not look like it, but I do. It's like a muscle. You do it often enough that you get more and more used to it, you get better and better at it, and then eventually it's relatively easy for you to even conceive of doing it. If you had more of an ability, if the conditions were in place that allowed you to have more of these chance encounters with people, you'd be able to practice and get better at it. But you don't. So you can't. Right? This is why people that live in cities that have really good public transit and don't require you to have a car to live report having higher rates of happiness, which is kind of a nebulous metric, but have higher rates of good, lasting relationships, friendships, even partners, marriages, right? That's part of the reason why that is. If you're trying to focus all your energy on these hypergamous, slutty women or having sex all the well, how do you change that? You can't really, right? The only way that you can even venture a guess to try to change that is either change the men to try to be able to adapt to that environment or change the women. Now, if you're trying to change the women, you're going to fail regardless because women, am I right? Because it's not an actual problem that's happening. That's not a thing that is actually so prevalent of an issue that you could actually address it in any meaningful way anyway. But even then what do? You try to control women at that point, which is also not good because I, as a left-wing libertarian, would not want, anybody to have their freedoms restricted so long as they're not hurting anybody. So what then? You've got nothing. You've literally got nothing except working on yourself, and that can only do so much. That's the problem here. That's why what people like Hamza tell you is not going to take you far enough. That's why it might help you feel better. It might make you feel like physically in your health better. And that might make you more confident. You might look better. That might make you feel more confident. It might give you more of a push to start this kind of stuff. But if the systemic issue is still in place, you're not going to be able to be as effective as you would if it wasn't. So you need to simultaneously be fighting against that systemic issue and also improving yourself. The one thing that I will never take away from Hamza is that, clean your room, have a routine, work out, and wash your penis is actually good advice. And I give that advice too. Thing is, you don't need to hear it from Hamza. Literally anybody can tell you that shit. You don't have to hear it from Jordan Peterson, right? I could tell you that shit. So it's staring you in the face. Literally, it's staring you in the face. It is the structure of the society you live in at a foundational level, literally, the infrastructure. That is one of the major issues at play here, and also one that we could change and see very obvious signs that it is. And that would hopefully lead to these kinds of problems improving. Anyway.
Consequence of this becomes even more understandable when you start to look at how our modern society has opened up sex for both men and women, and especially for women. Women are way more forward with having sex these days than they would have 100, 200 years ago.
Wait, so if that was the case, wouldn't that be a positive? If women are more positive in regards to their sexuality and that they don't feel the need to suppress it and they don't feel forced to suppress it like they used to, would that not make it more likely potentially for men to be able to find women that are, suitable for whatever it is, they're trying to develop there? Oh, but of course it's, because all the high value men are taking them all somehow, even though literally half the population is women and half is men, right?
It's like these social standards. It's not only okay for a woman to sleep around these days, it's a little bit encouraged. If you look at all of them.
Yeah, but so what's interesting about that is I don't care about that. I don't care if women sleep around. It's your life as long as you're being safe and everybody's having, a good time. I don't give a shit. But it's also always been okay for men to do this. The only time it's not okay for men to do this is because of religious reasons, because of conservative reasons where like, oh, well, you have to abstain until marriage, right? That's the only time that happens. But generally speaking, because not everybody is religious or has those kind of religious views or conservative views, then men have literally always been allowed to sleep around. Men are the chads, right, for having a lot of sexual partners, and women are used and watched up or whatever for having a lot of sexual partners, right? And that's fucked. That's an obvious double standard. And the only reason people feel that to be a problem is one, because of the misogyny, blah, 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 blah. And two, because society has literally said that men are the ones who are supposed to be seeking other women out, right? We've kind of forced men to be in that box. And that's how you get all these problems of men not feeling like they can live up to it. And not only that, but there's also a pressure on women to not do that, by the way. And not only that, they might not feel safe doing it because of the amount of times that they might fear for their lives, literally, or their safety or well-being because of aggressive and violent men that are, like, trying to predate upon them, right? It doesn't feel safe because our society is lopsided in that way. I would imagine there are a lot of men that are watching Hamza, and even a lot of men that might watch me, or people in general who would love being approached by someone that found them attractive and was trying to become either platonic friends or romantic or sexual partners with them, should everything, be a situation where that is a fine thing to happen, right? I would imagine there are so many people who'd be like, oh my God, that's awesome. This is the reason why, like, the big meme is that, oh, you compliment a woman, and it's like, oh, thank you so much, because women literally compliment each other all the time platonically. Women are always complimenting each other. It's like a thing you do, even strangers. Like, this is a thing that happened to me as well. Once I started dressing femininely more out in the wild, right? I've actually just been randomly complimented by women. Randomly. Like, I was out the other day in a grocery store of all places, and there was a person who I assume is a woman, cancel me if I'm wrong, a feminine person who was like, oh my God, I love your shoes. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. That's so kind. That never happened to me when I was more in masculine dude mode, right? Before I started dressing more femininely. That never happened to me. Ever. And anytime any woman did so much as like give me the time of day, it was like, holy shit, bro, this is crazy. I'm gonna remember this compliment for the rest of my fucking life. Because of the society that we've lived in and the ways that we force men to be a certain way and women to be another way. This is a problem that people on the left are trying to fix. I'm sorry to get all political on you in this incredibly hyper-political video even before I started reacting to it, because this is a political video from Hamza. We're talking about political things of political consequence, regardless. It's some bullshit.
If you look at these music videos of these, these like idols, these rap stars, these like female rappers, fucking Megan Thee Stallion, fucking disgusting ass woman, bro. You see these women who are promoting this.
Disgusting women. Meanwhile, you got all the rappers on the man side of things that are grabbing at their dicks and talking about how they're fucking women and being shirtless and showing their underwear like the sluts that they are. And, more power to them for being sluts. I'm all in favor of men being sluts here. But, like, is that also not a problem for you? Or do you kind of have a blind spot here? I wonder.
This sex culture, this culture of telling little girls, 10-year-old girls, like, yeah, I just fucked my drug dealer. Yeah, it was so awesome. You see on TikTok.
What? Huh? So, like, the parents need to be a little bit more involved, maybe? And have, like, conversations about this kind of shit? And be like, yo, no, this is fiction. Or these are adults and these are adult issues. And blah, 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 right? Like, it might be, a problem of the parents. Yeah, exactly, Dem Suzuki. I don't think Megan Thee Stallion is going and making music for fucking 10-year-olds. That's not happening. Now, the 10-year-olds might hear it in passing because Megan Thee Stallion is popular and her music gets played on the radio, but then whose responsibility is it to talk to that 10-year-old and tell them, like, yo, this is adult stuff and we could talk about it when you're older, whatever, and explain it that way, and, like, maybe moderate how much people might be listening to it. Like, I'm for parents having very, like, structured and clinical, like, conversations with their kids about stuff like this. And it just doesn't seem like it's happening, I guess. I don't know. A lot of parents kind of relegate that to the public school system. And that's fine, because ideally your public school sex education is comprehensive and literally leads to societal benefit, like less teen pregnancy, less transmission of STIs, less abortions, less sexual abuse. So that's also good there. And that's why that exists, just in case the parents can't do that because they're working all the time. It's a whole bunch of shit. Regardless, like, the parents being involved and educating in that way also extends to the media that they're watching or just happen to be listening to. So, like, how is that a problem of Megan Thee Stallion making music for adults when it just happens to be heard by a kid? Where are the parents? You know what I mean?
of these girls just casually saying, like, oh yeah, I just fucked 3 guys yesterday and like I'm really lonely still. And so society's made it trendy for a girl to sleep around these days. Now couple that with the fact that there's no longer this constraint, this restriction on women's sexuality that came from our faith in God when everyone was religious. It was this idea that you couldn't have sex outside of marriage, and especially for
what a terrible life. Less people are religious now? Oh geez, Rick, what a problem. I don't care. You know my takes on religion. I have critical support for any leftist out there, left-wing person who is religious and doesn't fall victim to a lot of the negatives that we see from fundamental and conservative religious ideologies and the ways that people are pushed to be a certain way and blah, 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 blah. But I don't give a fuck about your specific religious predilections. I don't know why I should be forced to. I don't care. We live in a secular society. You could be religious if you want. But the idea that you could force everybody to be religious is ridiculous and counter to freedom, individual liberty. So I'm not with that. Like, it is possible to have sex outside of marriage responsibly.
Because there was more consequences to that. Women are certainly more vulnerable.
Well, what are those consequences? Hamza, please, what are those consequences? So women, because of religion, were less likely to sleep around because there were consequences. What are those consequences, Hamza? You want to tell us what the consequences are? I'm super curious. What consequences do you think there are? Now, you could say, they could get pregnant accidentally. Condoms, safe sex, responsible sex. Eliminates a lot of that. Accidents still happen. It's not really a problem anymore. Maybe back when, condoms didn't exist or whatever, or were not as easy to obtain, it was more of an issue. No more. Consent, another cool thing. I would say, what are these consequences? Are women getting in trouble with the law for doing this? Are women getting in trouble with, their communities? Because I don't think that's cool. I, being a person who really values individual responsibility and personal responsibility, do not think it is the domain of religions that not everybody subscribes to force people to be a certain way. I do not want to live in a theocratic dictatorship, my friend. That is a thing that is the exact opposite of what I want. I want a secular, heavily democratic society where people have a say in what happens in their lives, in their communities, in their workplaces, all this kind of shit. It's like, what are these consequences?
The consequences of casual sex that can impact your soul and your ability to fall into
don't care about the soul shit. Okay,
the love, and really respect the person that you end up marrying. Then
I don't know that it really matters if somebody's having a lot of sex, that they might have more difficulty getting a marriage partner. Not everybody wants to get married as well. Not everybody wants to have a family. Not everybody wants to have kids, contrary to popular belief. To all you people with breeder kinks out there, a lot of them seem to be on the conservative side of the fence.
With the sex revolution that started, I think, in the 60s, the 1960s, there was the birth of the contraceptive pill, and suddenly women now had the possibility of having casual sex without the risk of pregnancy,
and also freedom to have whatever partners they want without the heightened worry of accidentally getting pregnant. You know what the major consequence is of an unplanned pregnancy, outside of the fact that it's very traumatic to find out you're pregnant when you don't want to be, not to mention that it's very traumatic to bring a baby to term and go through labor and carrying a child, not only physically but mentally. Not only is it very traumatic to be forced to carry that baby to term, not only is it very traumatic to get an abortion, should that be the route that you choose, but the consequence if you end up having that child is that now you have another mouth to feed that you have to spend a lot of money to pay for. So what is usually going to be the case is that that woman who had that child, or that person who had that child, has to rely on the person who got them pregnant to help raise that child, at least financially. Because we all know there's a lot of deadbeat dads, there's a lot of deadbeat moms out there. They don't give child support or don't play an active part in their kid's life and all this kind of shit, which is very cringe and unfortunate. So usually the women there are literally beholden to a man that they did not want to have this child with. And now they're essentially fucked. The rest of their life, at least for the next 18, 21 years, is fucked until the kid moves out. Because they have to pay for a very expensive another mouth to feed, another human being, right? That, I would think, is one of the biggest consequences of getting pregnant. So alleviating that consequence and allowing people to do the natural thing for adults to do, which is have sex with other consenting adults and other consenting parties, it seems like a good thing to me. More freedom, brother. In the land of the free, the home of the... I don't know what you got dang oi bruvs over in the UK do it. But here in America, we like freedom. We like individual freedom. We like people being able to do what the fuck they want and not have to answer to nobody doing it. That's what we like in the God blessed United States of America. I don't know what you soy boys over in the UK are doing. But that's how we do it over here, ideally. Of course, we've got a lot of backwards motherfuckers in the South especially, but yeah.
many women hopped onto the pill, and what that meant now is not that many consequences for a woman sleeping around. There is very severe consequences for the long term, but most people don't think long term. Most people
so are there any consequences about men sleeping around? Well, inherently, if a person has the capacity to get pregnant, then there are going to be more risks involved in that. If you get pregnant, that is a massive fucking ordeal, no matter how you slice it, especially if you're not intending to. But, like, there are still a lot of consequences in that way that could come from men sleeping around, like transmission of STIs, or, you know, frankly, getting somebody pregnant that you did not intend to. I do not need to bring up the countless examples of anti-abortion politicians, even, people in power, who have gotten or paid for women to have abortions, right? There have been literally politicians that have this same kind of worldview, that there need to be consequences for women having sex, that have literally cheated on their wives and gotten their mistresses pregnant, and then paid for those mistresses to get abortions so that there isn't a consequence for that person to have sex. So it's like, what about the consequences for men, man? If we're talking about men's issues right now, why are we hyper-focusing on women? Makes me wonder.
But they're gonna promote her, tap her on the back. You go, girl. You fucked Chad last night. Whoa, awesome. Her mother.
Oh my god, bro. That chick was a fucking smoke show, bro. And you got her friend with it too at the same time, bro. Let's fuck it. Come on.
Usually would have been like this role model. Her mother's probably a slut. Her father, probably not in the home. And so this sounds sexist because I'm only talking about...
Okay, dude. Okay, dude. Meanwhile, motherfuckers look to you as their dad. I'm not even kidding. A lot of these dudes that are insecure in their masculinity, that are insecure in their ability to be men in society, look to people like Jordan Peterson, look to people like Hamza, because they're looking for a masculine role model. Clearly, if they are insecure in their masculinity and they need to find answers about it through YouTubers, they are not having the best relationship with their dad or getting that from their father, right? So don't, like, you're throwing shade at all these women, you know, having daddy issues, but your entire fucking business empire relies on men having the same exact problem. So I'd be a little careful. You know, the stones that you're throwing, the people that are watching you, if they're not all hyped up on hating women, might understand that you're also shitting on them. My dad always sat around in his bathrobe too. Yeah. It's literally the meme. That meme, I don't know if anybody can find it, where it's like the absolutely fucking disgusting, almost withered, but like it's not actually the withered Wojak, on the left, where like their mom is like, clean your room, clean yourself up, you'll feel better. And they're like, fuck you, mom, I'm playing CSGO or whatever. And then on the right, Jordan Peter's like, yo, clean your room, bucko, wash your penis. And then suddenly it's the bloomer Wojak and like, oh my God, you've saved my life. Like, it's the same shit we're talking about here, except you're operating on the bloomer side trying to give that advice. But, like, that's daddy issues, brother. Shouts out Kendrick Lamar, by the way, for talking about that shit in his most recent album. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Very good.
Women, but this is very important because the issue is that women are allowed to sleep around with no problems whatsoever attached to them.
And so are men, okay? Men have always been allowed to, now women are. But somehow this is a problem for men? I don't see it.
Well, then who do you think women are going to sleep with? If women in general are allowed to fuck, they're of course going to choose the best man to fuck, right? It's common sense.
Which is why me with the chick I pulled for being goofy isn't a meme. Me with the chick I pulled for being a little autistic, that's the meme, bro. Like, this is why there's like even a meme around like, yo, if you're not hot, you gotta be funny. And like there's some goofy dudes out there that punch way above their weight, quote unquote, because of that. Right? It's almost like it's not the case necessarily that people are always going to be superficial and worry only about aesthetics. There are going to be people like that, but then ideally you could find people who are not. Now, of course, to go back to what we were talking about before, we don't have a lot of opportunity to find people who are not.
It's like, if she's allowed to have sex, so she may as well pick the best guy for that. Who's the best guy? Well, it's the same guy that every girl's sleeping with. It's the top tier guys. It's the best guy that she could get. And so women can now afford
It's kind of fucked up. In this example, why'd they put Ben Shapiro as the cringe guy? What's up with that? That's kind of messed up, man. I don't know why Ben Shapiro had to catch a fucking stray here. They did my man dirty.
Tier guys. It's the best guy that she could get. And so women can now afford to be way more selective. Before, 100 years ago, if you were like not disgusting and you had a good job and you had good morals and values as a man, you'd get married. Like, you would literally be married with children at this age right now.
And also there were arranged marriages, child marriages. These things are bad, I would say. Also, women had literally no freedom and often were literally sold in like transactions where one dad would talk to another dad. So a dad who had a daughter would be approached by a dad who had a son and was like, yo, my son fancies your daughter, they could have like a thing and they could get married, and in return I would like, it was like bartering, really. I would like 2 of your fucking horses or some shit, or blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like, this is a real thing that happened. So people were forced into these kind of arrangements. I don't know if that's what Hamza is like proposing be done. It seems like he seems to think there needs to be some controls put on women to deal with this issue, because if you're going to posit that women having more freedom is the problem here, then obviously the logical extension of that is, okay, well, you think we have to control women's freedom, which I disagree with. The systemic changes to our infrastructure would go a long way by itself to allow men to get better at talking to women, even if they're not the hottest. They could be a little goofy. So what are we talking about?
Like 20 years old, you would have had children at this age because you just had a good job and you were like a strong, hardworking man. That was what was needed to marry a woman.
Yeah, okay, so here's another problem. A lot of men are not having good jobs. Not a lot of men are having good paying jobs either. There's a lot of people struggling to pay the bills. Well, whose fault is that? Now, dumbasses will tell you, like, oh, well, you haven't done enough. You haven't made yourself valuable enough, not only on the dating marketplace, but also in the job marketplace. Learn to code or whatever else, right? Back then, a lot of these people that had these good jobs were either working a trade, like you were making shoes, or working in the mines, or a carpenter or whatever, and that's how you would have a good job. And you weren't working for a big corporation either. You were working for yourself. Now we've outsourced a lot of our labor. A lot of these corporations and capital owners have outsourced all of the labor to other countries where they can massively exploit and underpay people. And if they had to put them in the United States, those jobs, they would also exploit and pay those people the least amount of money they could possibly get away with, right? So like, people are having bad paying jobs. Men are having bad paying jobs because of the economic system we live under and the negative consequences of it. Like, how can you simultaneously be like, yo, women don't want to sleep with men because they don't have a lot of money, but also I oppose raising the minimum wage, but also I oppose regulating corporations so that they cannot underpay workers. Also, I oppose immigration, which just happens to lead to illegal immigrants being able to be threatened with deportation so they could get paid $2 an hour, if that, to do a job that I could do for 15, right? Like, why do you oppose everything that would fix the issue at a systemic level if this is a problem that you have diagnosed? Like, I don't understand it.
Provide and to live this happy life of having a family. But now that's not enough, because now she may as well left swipe on every guy who is underneath 6 foot.
Oh, but nobody cares, bro. Nobody cares. Yes, there are some people that are superficial about height. We get it.
Left swipe on every guy.
So what do you propose, bro? Get taller? It doesn't work like that.
Who isn't making at least $100K a year.
Whose problem is that? It's not easy to get a good paying job. There might be a problem with the system, my friend.
May as well left swipe on every guy who isn't a 7 or an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Because why should she give you this pity right swipe? Why should she invest into you, a guy who's not anywhere near as good as the next guy?
So we avoid these dating apps, which are cancer on the mind, and try to go out and touch grass. And we try to make our cities, our towns, our infrastructure situated in such a way that you can do that without having to spend money. And you can walk around, not even need a car. Still have one if you want one, but not even need one.
There are men out there who have fucked tens of thousands of women. And
That's
then there's
crazy.
you. Your heartbeat goes faster when you think about
it. So this is another thing, bro. Like, all of this is based around insecurity. And obviously, like, being insecure is a thing, right? Like, being insecure is a thing that happens to people. And it's natural. It's a thing that happens. But like, why is it that you're like, okay, I'm going to do self-help content. I'm going to try to help people get better. And then I'm like, on the other breath, I'm like, oh, there's men who've had sex with tens of thousands of women. And then there's you, a low-life piece of shit loser who hasn't had sex with anybody so much you're a kissless virgin piece of shit. Like, what is this, man? If you look at this dude's content and the advice he's giving, and then you look at mine is so much more of a positive outlook. Mine's like, yo, we could fight for these kinds of changes in our society, see actual material change happen before our eyes, and then work toward making society a better place. And this dude's like, you're a fucking piece of shit loser. You might have the potential, if you're good enough, to get to the point that you can sleep with thousands of women or whatever. Like, why the fuck are you going to somebody who's shitting on you? Maybe not directly, but certainly indirectly. I don't understand.
And then the second reason why men are so lonely these days is that we don't have male spaces anymore.
That's true.
Something
I've talked about this as well, and I know how to fix it. How does Hamza think we fix it?
Sexist, misogynist, hateful that I just did recently. I told the moderators in my server, so we have a Discord server that's linked in the description. I'm not trying to plug it to you, but there's a big server there of 100 and something.
It's unfortunate that a person that seems to be dipping their toe, I don't think he was religious before, but now he's, talking about it a bit more, is also named his shit the cult. You could say like, oh, well, it's a joke. It's tongue-in-cheek because people say he has a cult, so you might as well. But like, it just doesn't look good, man. It's not really a thing I would own in that way. I don't know, dude. A little spooky.
Thousand young people, right? Young men, mostly young men. I think there's 97% male people who are in this big Discord server that we have that I'm the owner, and maybe like 3% women, right? It's the same as our YouTube analytics, right? The moderator started talking
damn,
about...
that's fucked up. He said it's like 97.3% for 97% men, 3% women. I looked at my analytics, and I talk about this shit too, just not literally all the time. I talk about more shit. Plus this, and my shit is like 20 some percent female and then other. Let me look. I'm curious. One sec. I know it smells crazy in there. Yeah, look at this. Past 28 days, age and gender. We got male 68.3%, which is substantial. But that's also because these kinds of spaces seem to be slanting toward men to begin with, unfortunately. 24.6% female. Hell yeah. That's certainly more than 3%. Wonder why that is. It might be because I have more all-encompassing takes that help everybody and not just men, often at the expense of women. And then I have user-specified 7.1%, which is all you non-binies and whatnot.
And I did something totally sexist, right? Which so many people could hate me for. I made a message for all the moderators and said, no, we will never ever produce an update on this server for women. Our focus will be 100% dedicated to the men. You've probably never heard someone speak like that before, where I openly will look you in the face and say, no.
I do think that's fair. I think men's only spaces should exist. I think that's fine. I don't know why people would have a problem with that. Now, I feel like it'd probably be beneficial to the men in that server to be able to like interface with women in general, because then you could get kind of used to it and it makes it easier in your day-to-day life. So like pushing them out, which I don't think is what he's not saying like, oh, kick all the women out. He's just saying like, we're not going to like make a special space or anything like that for women, which is your right. I don't give a shit. Now, I feel like if we lump it in with all the shit you've been talking before, I could see it having misogynistic motivation, though I don't think it does in this specific instance.
Hundreds of years ago, men were going through a rite of passage. The elders, like the older males, would put a young man, like a teenage boy, through this rite of passage, something hard work, like working on the farm or some dangerous activity. And then his father and his brothers and his uncles would be stood there looking at this young man and saying, you're a man now. Imagine how you would feel if you went through that. Imagine if like men who you respected put you through something difficult and there was only men around, and then like some man that you truly respected put his...
manual labor is the only way to become a man. True and real. Doctors, I guess that's manual labor. Scientists that develop, vaccines or other kinds of life-saving medicines. A lot of those are men. I don't know about this. Like, it's true that having positive masculine role models in your life is good. I don't know if I'm taking advice about manual labor from somebody in a bathrobe, to be honest. I guess you could say the same about me, but, like, at least I'm giving you actual real reasons for why this shit happens. Like, I'm not only diagnosing a problem, but providing potential solutions that aren't just wash your penis. But I'm also telling you to wash your penis.
Hand on your shoulder and said your name and said you're a man now.
Oh, yeah, and who's doing that hard labor anyway? Fucking illegal immigrants. And you know how you could change that? By allowing them to become full citizens so that their labor cannot be exploited on the basis of them getting deported if they, ask for a raise, right? Bada bing, bada boom. Clear that problem up. If the job market is so competitive because illegal immigrants can be exploited and threatened with deportation to be given $1.50 an hour, whereas you as a citizen would be able to get $15 an hour, once those people are all citizens, suddenly everybody's getting paid $15 an hour, meaning that your citizen status is no longer working against you in that way. And not only that, that's not a problem of the illegal immigrants there. That's a problem of the corporations, right? Why are you mad at illegal immigrants for that when it's the capital owners, the capitalists, the CEOs, the bosses who are hiring those people?
What I've just described is seen as toxic in this modern day. I'm toxic. I'm so fucking toxic.
No, you're not toxic. You're just fucking stupid. I'm sorry. Like, you're not toxic. You're just dumb. You're just not informed.
That's exactly what I want to do for young men now. If that's toxic, then I'm toxic as fuck. One of my like long-term goals is I want to move somewhere very like safe so I can organize this in a safe way and buy out like this big fucking like space, this compound, you know, acres of land, and set up some.
You know, I seem to have an inherent worry about religious compounds that are detached from society. I feel like historically that has only led to bad things happening. I would advise against this move, Hamza. Now, like, if you buy out, like, a space, you have, like, a gym or, like, a court where people can play sports or, like, a third place where people can just hang out and anybody can show up, or even, like, memberships only can, maybe that's better than fucking a compound, acres of land. Like, I don't know about that, chief.
And invite for free a select number of my audience, you know, every year there's like 15
Jesus
guys,
Christ.
and put them through a rite of passage right in front of me, where I will like make you do some hard shit right in front of me, something that like is dangerous. And if you survive, if you get to the end of it, I will personally look at you and say that you're a man now, because we don't have these rites of passages anymore.
So here we go. So what's my solution to all these problems that we've diagnosed? Attacking the systems at play here when it comes to infrastructure. Pressuring your politicians and the powers that be to no longer format your society around cars and having money and like consumerism, but rather allowing people to be able to walk to where they want to go, to bike to where they want to go, to take public transit to where they want to go, and provide third places where you don't have to have money, where you can have chance encounters with random strangers, platonic friendships and romantic or sexual relationships can form from that. You know, also a variety of other, you know, ways you can organize. That's my solution. That's one of my solutions. Not only just like making yourself a better person by working out, exercising, having a routine, which I talk about all the goddamn time anybody asks me about it, but systemic changes to these problems. That's my solution. What's Hamza's solution? We don't have rites of passages anymore. We don't have rituals people go through to become men. Like, women are having a lot of sex. Women used to be under the control of men more in the past and had infinitely less freedom, and now they have more freedom, and that's somehow a problem. Like, you see how one of these positions has the actual potential and real scientific analysis and data to back up that not requiring people to have a car to live promotes more happy people, better relationships, people making more money, like businesses performing better. Because you can look at a variety of countries in Europe that have that are able to do that. You've got actual examples. And then what's on Hamza's side? Mythology about religion and the past. Like, clearly one of these is more likely to produce results if we can already see the results in the world, right? Like, so how the hell are you taking this guy's advice?
Not just have, you know, this significant event that turns us into a man. We don't have any male spaces at all. This new inclusion, you know, this, what's that word? Inclusive sort of era where like we're not allowed to just have like a boys club anymore. You know, the Boy Scouts.
You're literally allowed to, though. It's not illegal to have a boys only zone. Right? It's not illegal to put a no girls allowed because they have cooties sign on your treehouse. We're just trying to make it so that there are also shared spaces.
You know, male sport teams are getting pressured to allow women in them because, you know, well, you can't just have a space with just guys. That's toxic. So what was once this core, strong group, you know, multiple groups all around the world that was just full of men actually being men together with a sense of competition and our male masculine values, it's being destroyed and took away from us. Bro, this shit pisses me off, honestly. Do you know how many...
So let's take it at face value. All these men's spaces being destroyed. Who's at fault? Hamza says woke SJWs who are trying to make women be a part of Boy Scouts and also women in men's sports. They're trying to force that too because of inclusivity. Who's destroying all these men's spaces? Who's making it so that we don't have shared spaces anymore? My response? Mega wealthy corporations like fucking General Motors, Ford, the car and automobile industry that have literally bought and paid for politicians to make it so that you need a car to get anywhere, so you don't have any shared spaces, so that you cannot walk to places, so that you cannot get on a bus. You have to have the money to have a car to go anywhere. And even then, you're not having chance encounters with nobody without going to a place that you have to spend money to be at. Like, which of these answers seems more likely to actually be the answer? Which of these has actual material change you can see happen should action be taken against it? Because on the one hand, Hamza's going to be like, okay, we got to do a pressure campaign online. So I'm not saying he said this, but I'm hypothetically. We got to do a pressure campaign online to try to get Boy Scouts to not let girls join and not let women sport players be in a men's sport. Who does that help? Nobody. It's helping nobody. You're just getting mad at nothing.
female homeless shelters there are. Lots and lots and lots. It's actually becoming like an issue in America where a lot of male homeless shelters.
Why are there so many homeless people? I cannot believe there are so many homeless people in the richest country the face of the earth has ever seen. Why are there so many homeless people? We've actually got more vacant homes than there are homeless people. Why are there so many people without homes? It might be, and bear with me, this might be crazy, a systemic issue. It might be a problem of housing, of literally shelter. Food, water, shelter. You know, the thing that people need to live, being turned into a product, being turned into something you can buy, and something that you can buy and withhold people from occupying. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's house should be open season and everybody should, like, be able to enter your house at any time. You can have a house, but, like, the problem here is not individual people not, like, washing their dick enough and working out enough to no longer be homeless, or all the women, like, they're sleeping around all the time, so that's why they're homeless. That's not the problem. The problem is that literally, like, mega wealthy banks are buying houses and sitting on them. Wealthy people are buying houses and sitting on them, turning them into Airbnbs so that people can only go there, like, renting, not even actual renting, but, like, the houses are empty, like, half the time. We've got more houses that are empty than we have homeless people, and we have more than enough space to build more housing, but we haven't done it. Why is that? Surely it's because girls are allowed in Boy Scouts now. Get serious, man. Don't let this motherfucker sheepdog you into whatever bullshit he's talking about. Because clearly he's not trying to help you. Clearly this dude does not have the answers that you need, right? Like, do you know how foolish that sounds? Like, I literally, the first time I looked at this dude on the request of a chatter, this alpha male channel is creating a community of soy boys, this video right here, from 7 months ago. Literally true. Because if you watch this motherfucker, that's what you're gonna become. You're not gonna be able to do anything about any of these actual problems. You're just gonna get mad at, you know, women trying to be in men's sport or whatever, and you're gonna jerk yourself raw over the fact that you can't have sex, and then you're gonna die. Meanwhile, if the world that I would like to see comes into fruition, then suddenly everybody's better off, not just men. And we can look at other countries who have done this successfully, like the Netherlands, like a variety of European countries that Americans go to, and it's like a fucking fantasy land because you don't need a car to get around. And then they come back to suburbia where they have to drive 30 minutes either way from their cookie cutter home to get their kids to school or go and get groceries. It's so annoying, dude. You're being given problems and you're not being given solutions. And I can think of nothing more cowardly or cucked than that. Like, it is literally considered a masculine characteristic to diagnose a problem and fix it. This dude is diagnosing problems, and I might agree that some of them exist, though not all of them, at least not the way that he describes them. But he's not giving you any actual solutions. He's pretending to. Maybe he's deluded himself into thinking that he has, but clearly it's not anything that would produce any benefit to anybody. In fact, a lot of these so-called ways to fix these problems end up hurting people, like controlling women more so they can't sleep around or whatever. Or by, like, pressuring the tiny fraction of girls who might want to go into the Boy Scouts from doing so. Like, who cares?
To let women in, and eventually once you let women into like this homeless shelter, kind of have to like change the rules and, you know, change the sort of structure that eventually what was once a homeless shelter for both men and women eventually has to become just for women, because then there's like an issue of like, you know, putting quite like, you know, homeless, dangerous, drug addict kind of like people all together. There's actually a lot of like these sad accounts of a bunch of homeless guys who can't even find any kind of shelter to go to because they're not women.
Like, what is this endless crabs in a bucket bullshit, dude? You just constantly gotta pull other people down that are also struggling? There's no better example than this. On the one hand, you've got homeless men, and on the other hand, you got homeless women. You know what the common thing there is? They're both fucking homeless, man. They can't find a pot to piss in. That's the problem. Not because women have a better chance at getting into a shelter than men, and if we make it harder for women to get into a homeless shelter, then suddenly the men will have a better time. Like, what the fuck kind of soy shit is this?
Imagine being homeless, bro. Imagine being literally hungry. Going up to like a homeless shelter that should technically allow you in. They've got a free space, a free room right there, which is warm. And you're literally fucking like cold. You've got cold shivers. You smell.
Like the idea that you're gonna be like, oh my god, I empathize so much with the struggles of homeless people. You have no idea. But also, I'm gonna literally talk about how women have it better being homeless. What does that even do? Like, where are you going with that? What do we do then? kick the women out of the homeless shelters so that homeless men can go in. Also, this is not even to mention that one of the main reasons why homeless shelters might have to be segregated is because there might be men predating on women in there. And it is possible that women predate on men. That does happen, but certainly not to the same extent and not to the same percentage, right? So, like, maybe men gotta clean their own room, unironically, in our society. But, you know, so surely it's all the women's fault, dude.
There's a free room right there with a shower, with a toothbrush and literally, there's a free room right there.
And they look you in the eyes and say, homeless people when you clearly don't give a shit.
You need to go.
Like, you cannot pretend to give a fuck about homeless people if you are not also for decommodifying housing, or even at the bare minimum, like spending more money and pressuring the powers that be to put more money into building public housing or affordable housing. Like, you cannot possibly pretend to, oh my God, I care so much about homeless people, if that is not the next sentence that comes out of your fucking lips, man. I will not take that shit.
Because this is what's happening. Male spaces are being destroyed because they think that we're toxic. They think that we're hateful, hurtful people for this.
Meanwhile, so many of our problems here is that women have freedom, and you haven't had the stones to say it, but then what is your solution? How do you fix that?
They think that we hate women. They don't even realize like how much we actually respect and admire and even slightly worship women. They don't realize we're watching videos like this, discussing male loneliness because we just want love.
Yeah, you're watching videos discussing male loneliness, and the entire time we've been talking about how women are the problem. Like, it seems like you're making pretty feminine content if you're just talking about women the whole time.
So there's those two major reasons why 90% of men are lonely. The dating market is all messed up, and the majority of guys aren't getting any attraction
I already
from
gave
girls.
you actual
Girls
systemic solutions for that.
Who's not a top tier man. And then also male spaces are just being destroyed.
And I've given the same answer to the previous one as the answer to that one. Let's go, dude. Why are you watching Hamza content?
Dating and having... And so
right,
what are the consequences?
I don't care what... I've already told you what the consequences are. I really don't give a shit. I don't care about nice guys, blah, blah, blah. We're already an hour and 30 in. I don't think I gotta go any further. What's this one? The results of encouraged female promiscuity. Ah, yes, we're going to talk about women for the majority of the video. All of this, I think, is specifically tailored to men, but it also talks about women a lot, I'm sure, based on the friend zone bullshit. Now, this is all about women. This is why this is women's problem. What does the future look like for men? It looks like that you're a fucking soy boy cuck who doesn't know how to care for himself if you're listening to Hamza content to diagnose these issues. I don't need to completely relitigate everything I've said. If you've heard anything that I've said and you've actually internalized any of it, then very clearly this dude is not going to be able to help you. Like, if you agree with even one thing that I said, you're not going to find that answer in a Hamza video. You might hear wash your penis, you might hear work out, you might hear have a routine, sure, but literally anybody can tell you that. Your own mother probably told you that, and you told her to fuck off because you were too busy playing CSGO or League of Legends. This is all the same shit you can hear from anybody else. So, like, I don't know what to do, man. Like, I can only do so much. I try to help people so much. And Jesus Christ, man. 429,832 people watch this, and apparently 97% of this man's audience is men. So, like, that's 429,000 people, 430,000 people that are being fed garbage. That's not going to help anybody. And then you go, oh my God, Conure, are you just salty? You don't have the same numbers? I don't give a damn. Because I'm not even the person who's going to be the most effective giving this kind of commentary. A lot of people coming from Hamza's channel to look at me are probably going to be like, yo, this person's got a hair in a ponytail. Oh my, they got eyeliner on their eyes. I don't care, dude. Like, I'm giving you better advice than this dude who's like trying to be Adonis and has a beard and all this shit, bro. And like in a bathrobe, showing a little bit of collarbone, you know? Like, come on. Like, obviously, I'm not the archetype, and we need more people that look like this to be given the same commentary I'm giving as well. Like, if there are any dudes out there, or even women that are into fitness, though, you're also going to have similar difficulties. Like, that find what I'm saying receptive and think that you could, like, do essentially Hamza content, but for better results and actually give actual solutions and do that shit, I highly encourage that you do. I would like a little bit of credit if that's where you're hearing a lot of this rhetoric from. You know, that would be cool. I would appreciate that. It would make me feel good, and it's more likely I see you doing it. But, like, this is not good. This is not good content. And it's the same for a lot of other channels that do this. I don't know. Anyway. This video is Conure is the duo Ana Superata and Azulite Black. Thanks so much both of you for the support. Hope you keep on trucking. If you'd like to be the next Conure, all you gotta do is follow me on Twitter at ConureCC, retweet my video links when they go live. Remember to subscribe to the channel, all notifications on with the bell. Leave a like if you'd like. Comment something down below about how men are cool, at least they can be, if they are doing things that are good for people and not bad. Have a good day.